You've seen the best.
You've seen the worst.
Now here's the rest of both worlds.
I'm GayFesh, and a cook's only as good as his ingredients.
And I'm Ari, and my god, it's full of stars.
And today we will be discussing the Star Trek The Next Generation episodes The Royale and Time Squared. But first we have a very special treat for Ari, because I know how much you love Kamala Khan, I don't know which way it's pronounced. And the Miss Marvel trailer just dropped. So
It did. And it's man, I got so excited. I think I've watched it like 5 or 6 times. I've had blinding lights stuck in my head for a week and a half or whatever since it came out. And I've just been, it looks amazing. It looks like they're keeping the spirit of the books. They're keeping all of her Muslim, heritage in there. This last time I watched it right before we were recording, I saw that they showed the caravan, from her backstory. I'm so excited. Like, I've heard some people complaining that it's not going to be from Terrigen gas like it is in the comics.
Who cares about the Inhumans?
Who cares?
That was something Ike Perlmutter was pushing behind the scenes because they didn't have the film rights to X-Men. So they're like, we need another way to just give people powers without a backstory. Give people powers,
yeah. And it always never felt like Kamala should have been an Inhuman. It just felt like they were like, well, we need to make more Inhumans, so we'll make Kamala one.
Yeah.
But it seems like from the trailer that she is going to get her powers from her gauntlet bracelet thing, which she just wears in the books. It doesn't actually have any powers. So I'm interested to see how they do that. But at this point, I trust the MCU to do it okay, Yeah,
it's my understanding that, it seems like her popularity is more to do with her personality and not so much the exact power set. Although there's something very iconic about that when she embiggens her fists, just that iconic shot. And they keep that even because, even though it's like some purple crystalline construction or something, she still
just
has
as long as it's not
fist.
A dang Infinity Stone. That's all I care about. I do not want her getting her powers from the Infinity Stones. We finished the Infinity Saga. I want them out of my life. And I thought they were, and then they showed up in Loki again.
The reason they showed up in Loki is because he had one, and then they immediately dealt with it by saying, oh, they don't even work here. That to me wasn't them bringing back the Infinity Stones. That was them saying, no, the Infinity Stones are worthless now.
Good, because that's how I kind of took it too, but I'm always afraid they're going to just end up leaning back on the Infinity Stones, but we spent so much time with them when there's so many more interesting things going on in Marvel.
We're in the multiverse saga now. I don't think we're doing any more Infinities.
I just rewatched Too Many Spider-Man yesterday. and I am so ready for Doctor Strange. Like, that movie sets up Doctor Strange so well. I'm so ready. But anyway, Kamala, I am... I've been reading her books forever now. I'm really ready for this. I've been really nervous. I've been afraid she'd just be some bit character in a Ms. Marvel movie instead of getting her own thing. But she's definitely getting her own thing because they skipped Ms. Marvel for Carol altogether. Mm-hmm. Which I think will be interesting to see what happens with this show because... in the first issue of Ms. Marvel, she gets hit with the Terrigen gas and she gets her shape-shifting powers. And every time she has to fight crime for that first issue, she turns into Carol Danvers. She shape-shifts into looking like Carol Danvers. And so Carol comes and finds her in that first issue and they link up immediately. So all this backstory where she's running around and nobody knows who she is and stuff I'm interested to see how that goes because her 2 closest allies are Tony, who is dead now. So they've taken that away from Kamala and Carol. And so I'm curious to see if they keep her doing the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man thing when really she became an Avenger pretty quickly because she hooked up with them pretty quickly.
Well, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it's been confirmed that Brie Larson's going to be in the show, but I'm pretty sure she's going to make at least...
She's got to be, right? Yeah.
At least in the last episode. And even though she doesn't have her shape-shifting powers, a lot of the trailer shows her running around in a Halloween costume version of
dressed
Carol's
up as Carol.
Suit. Yeah. So they're still keeping that. And I'm also curious to see, Captain Marvel really hasn't been in a lot of the MCU yet. And
I know.
They just kind of... the first time we actually heard her name, Captain Marvel, was in Spider-Man Far From Home. They just said it oh, she was Captain Marvel all the time, even though she was never actually called that in the films.
Right.
And I have to assume it was something that happened during the 5 years of the blip. She probably came around Earth more than once. And so that's where, she's popular. That's why Kamala Khan is like, a fan of hers.
Yeah, she's got to have.
It can't just be showing up to beat up Thanos. It's got to be more than that.
It's got to be, otherwise no one would know who she was. There wouldn't be Marvel books of her, because that's one of the more interesting things about the Marvel comic book universe is that that movies and comic books and the characters being characters exist in the comic books. And so yes, just like Gwenpool, Kamala is a huge comic book nerd, and her favorite character is Carol, and that's how she ends up becoming Ms. Marvel, is because Carol has already graduated to captain at that point. So.
See, that's interesting too, because we're going to be getting She-Hulk as a series sometime soon here, and She-Hulk is one of the other characters in the Marvel comics who has fourth wall awareness. In fact, because she's a lawyer, and she often will work cases involving superheroics, she will actually go to like comic book stores to study case law.
Interesting. I haven't read any She-Hulk. Yeah, okay.
She could just pull up old issues of Marvel to be like, okay, so in Captain America Volume 2, issue 200 or whatever, this happened or something like that, and uses that as case law.
That's so funny. Yeah, I've been wanting to read some of hers before her show comes. Hers is a show, not a movie, right?
It's a show, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's interesting to know. But yes, like, so Kamala was a huge Marvel fan, Ms. Marvel, Captain Marvel fan, and so that's why she ends up taking on the moniker in the books. So I'm really excited to see how it goes, and I'm really excited to see another like kind of high school based Marvel project too, because they've been milking it with Peter Parker, but he's obviously a 25-year-old man now. Like, I was watching.
He's like done with high school. He was like taking his GED at the end of the latest Spider-Man. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm just glad we're done with that, because he's way too old to keep being in high school. But
I mean, he does have a pretty young look to him, but yeah.
He does, yeah. So I think with that, we're ready for the Royale.
Yep, let's get into it.
It is the 12th episode of the second season of The Next Generation. It aired on the 27th of March, 1989. It was written by Keith Mills and directed by Cliff Bole.
Okay, you used to run a publishing company, a small print, right?
I did, yes.
Okay, what's the worst book in your slush pile that you ever had to deal with?
I call it sheep sex. It was literally this book that I could barely get through. Like I ended up like offering to help them edit it, but they didn't want to take any of the editing advice, but like it was really bad, and it was from the perspective of sheep, and they kept having sex scenes in it. And so that is apparently the book that I would get stuck in. But I mean, that was really relatable, right? Like, I'd rather die than be stuck in this bad book for the rest of my life, right, or for the rest of forever.
So the Enterprise discovers there's like some debris orbiting a planet that has impossible stats. Geordi was actually like listing off like how old the planet is and like the temperature on the surface, and he said the temperature was like minus 291 degrees Celsius, which is below absolute zero. Which is impossible. You can't go below absolute zero.
Okay. I was not tracking any of this during that part. I was like, that's a lot of truck-no-babble or whatever. I was like, okay. I don't really pay attention when they're rambling like that.
The age of the planet they gave, and like they did it in like scientific notation, but if you calculate it out, it's like 72 billion years, and the universe is only 13.5 billion years old. So whoever wrote that truck-no-babble did not check the numbers on that one. But the
ammonia tornadoes that did Geordi a big concern.
Yeah, sure, that can happen. But anyway, they beam up some of the debris, and they discover that it was an old NASA ship. And it actually uses, interestingly, the NASA logo that they used for this was retired in 1992, but as they established, this ship must have been anywhere between 2034 and 2079, because it's got a 52-star U.S. flag on it.
Right, yeah.
So you would think, well, that's unfortunate that the NASA logo changed, except that they changed it back to that like 2 years ago. Oh. So we're actually still good.
We're good. Continuity error fixed. Yeah.
But the fact that the 52-star flag is how they decided, okay, so it's between 2034 and 2079, means that we've got about 12 years before DC and Puerto Rico become states.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out who those two would be as well.
And those are the most likely candidates because DC has voted that they want to become a state. So it's, that's
and
a
I was over here
possibility.
trying to think about what states split down the middle. That's what I was doing. I was like, so did Texas split in half? Like,
no, we're getting Northeast Dakota.
Northeast Dakota. Just a little corner.
Yeah.
Okay, so first off, I was really really excited and thrown off because I thought it was going to be an Alice in Wonderland episode.
Okay.
Because they're right after all of that and the ammonia tornadoes and everything. And then Riker comes in and Picard has the worst laptop I've ever seen. And he shows him and he's talking about like a fake mathematician. And then Data comes in.
No, he's not talking about a fake mathematician. He's talking about Fermat's last theorem, which is a very famous unproven theorem. At the time of the writing of the show, it was, and he gave like. But
I thought they said that he only died like 70 years ago. He said something like for 70 years now we've
700.
Oh, okay, I see. I thought we were talking about a fake mathematician.
No, they're talking about a real one. Fermat's last theorem. At the time of the episode, the theorem was still unproven, but
is it proven now?
It was proven in 1994, so it's a little, if they just waited a couple more years, and I think even Deep Space Nine like has a line where like one of the characters is like, well, I'm trying to find a simpler theorem for Fermat's last theorem or something to imply that even though, because the proof that we've got for Fermat's last theorem is like a book thick.
Oh, okay.
And in his notes, he said, I have a proof, but it just can't fit in the margins of this thing. So I can't fit in the margins of my notebook is a little different than 400 pages of proof.
It is true, yeah. Okay, so they're like talking though, and what Picard says is curiouser and curiouser. And that's obviously Alice. And they even brought like awareness to it because Data looked over at him like, what is that thing he just said, right? And so I was like, all right, it's an Alice in Wonderland episode. And, I don't think I brought this up on the podcast, but I'm as much into Alice as I am to 2001, pretty much.
I was at your wedding. It was Alice in Wonderland themed. I remember.
Yep. I don't think I'd watched 2001 yet. So originally I thought this was going to be an Alice in Wonderland episode because of that like nod, and I was super excited. And then they go through the magical revolving door in the void and they are in a hotel. And my first thought was The Shining. I know I'm very one-track mind, but my first thought was The Shining. And then my second thought was, oh no, it's actually 2001, which is proven later when they get into the guy's quarters and his journal says basically, I hope a human reads this. They brought me here and I think they didn't mean to kill us all. So they put me in what they thought would be an interesting like way to live out the rest of my life, which is in this hotel, which turns out to be the world's worst novel, right? Probably a Stuart Woods novel. And so all of that though is so 2001, and I even sent you the YouTube of the end of 2001 so that you could see it, because at the end of the movie he's turned off Hal, he's man versus environment, he's man versus machine, he's man versus everything, and he's defeated everything. So now he is ready to enter the monolith, and it says beyond the infinite on the screen, and then we go through like a 5-minute psychedelic thing and none of this is explained. This is all just my own theories. Right. But what's happening in that psychedelic thing is that aliens are downloading the whole history of knowledge into his brain. And so when he gets to what most people refer to as the hotel room, he is kind of still having a seizure from that information download, and he's in his pod, and he looks out and he sees a version of himself in the red spacesuit looking back at him. But when it goes in close on his eyes, he's much older than the Dave we know. And then it keeps skipping forward. Every time Dave sees himself, he gets older until he becomes an old man, and then he becomes a space baby. But the point of all of this is, to me, my theories behind 2001, which I have not really tested them against the internet because I don't want other people's opinions. is that the aliens brought him there. They put him through these tests. He went through the tests and he succeeded. And now he has, but they don't want to kill him, because for him to go to the next part of his evolution, to bring humanity to the next part of our evolution, so we all become these, higher beings, he has to evolve, but they don't want to kill him. So they put him in this hotel room until he grows, older and older. And each time he skips forward in time, and then he's reincarnated as a space baby. And so for me, when they read the part about how he was brought there, and he thought maybe the aliens thought this would make him comfortable and all this kind of stuff, I was like, oh man, that is exactly what I think the aliens are doing in 2001. They brought Dave here, but they're like, now that he's here, we are, so cognizant we don't want to kill him that we're going to allow him to live out his life alone in what we perceive to be the fanciest hotel room that we can think of as aliens, with lit up floors. And so when they got there to this hotel, that's what I thought. I thought, okay, this is what it is. And it turned out to be true. But it also ended up being worse than a Dixon Hill novel. At one point, they were like shooting each other up. And like there was this big scene with like this Mickey D and his girlfriend. And I was like, okay, so somebody like wanted to make a love letter to 2001, but also wanted to make an episode of TNG. So anyway, I was just so excited. I know everything's a reference, but this one to me really felt like someone watched 2001 and was like, how can we take that concept and apply it to a Star Trek episode?
That's possible. I couldn't find anything in the discussion of writing the episode from the writers specifically referencing 2001, but it does sound like this episode used to have a better script, but like just I think Gene wanted to pare down some of the more fantastical elements, and the fact that they wanted to make it a little more like comedic and a little more esoteric with like some weird shit going on. That's to me also sounds like okay, they probably were doing a 2001 thing, but there's no direct reference.
Right. I have not Googled it yet. I was going to after we recorded to see if there was any other nerds out there like me that were like, hey, this is totally a 2001 thing. But like I said, I like to record before I look up those things.
Memory Alpha does make mention that this has a similar plot element to 2001, but it doesn't make any ties. It doesn't say whether it was inspired by
on purpose or not. Okay. Right. But I don't think any of my other times have been like, oh, that's totally a 2001 reference. Have made
This one seems like of all of your 2001 ties, this one seems like the most. Yeah, I think you're onto something.
Okay.
But also when they beam down before they enter the revolving door, they're just kind of in a black void. It's it's just like they just shot in like a bare studio warehouse with just like one set and a lot of lights off except for certain spotlights. And it actually reminded me, there was like some TOS episodes that kind of did that minimalism feel to it.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, I don't remember. There was like one specific episode that kind of did that, where there was just very minimal set pieces. And when I first saw it, I was just like, oh, are we going to get like a whole episode like that? But then once they go through the door, it's just like, okay, no, they actually have a full hotel set. I was half expecting, I'm like not fully remembering this episode. Are we just going to see like, craps tables just out in this void or whatnot? But no, right. It was a full hotel.
It would have been kind of cool though, right? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
They were so confused by revolving doors.
I'm confused by revolving doors. I don't blame them. Those things are true. So annoying.
If I have a choice, like if there's one of the, like, here's the revolving door, but over there is the normal person door, I will go through the normal person door. I have since I was a child, had a very strong fear of revolving doors, of getting trapped in them.
The revolving doors that scare me the most are the one-way revolving doors. Like when you're leaving, like a Woodland Park Zoo has them. Where it's like they've got the doors are just like horizontal bars, and then they pass through a little bar gate, so like you can't go through the other way. And I'm always terrified looking at that. I'm like, what if you get caught between the bars as they like go through each other?
I have weird fears as a kid, but the revolving doors one was real. Getting stuck in the milk case at Costco was a real one too.
Ooh.
I used to think, because my mom used to make, go in there and get the milk, and it used to come in the box with the two 1-gallon, things in it or whatever. And then the door would hit me on the back, and I was a very small, 8-year-old child trying to pull this 2-gallon box of milk out. And I always thought I was going to get trapped and die in the Costco fridges. Anyhow, so they get down and they're confused by revolving doors, and they walk in and they're like, we're at Canto Bite. Of course we're here. That's where we are. And I was like, oh, okay. But then they're like, well, nothing seems to be amiss here. And Data is basically like, Riker, we gotta go. Let's go, Riker. And he's like, guys, it is a vacation planet. Do not take this from me. So they hang out for a while. There's the hat guy and the girl, and they were boring and didn't really add anything to the casino.
I thought the hat guy was funny. They're stock characters. They're very cliche. She's a dumb blonde who doesn't know how to gamble and is, losing all of her money, and he's taking advantage of the situation. I'll just
shut
give you a
my
little
mouth. Yeah.
Data, actually, when he gets to the blackjack table, the way he cuts those cards with one hand, I'm not sure if Brent Spiner himself did that because
the way they cut it.
Because it was a close-up shot. And there's other times that single hand card cutting technique is something that he does as a poker dealer in future episodes. But I can't remember if I ever saw Brent Spiner, a wide shot of Brent Spiner doing it, or whether it was just close up with somebody else who actually can do that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Hired a card shark to do that trick.
Yeah.
It's a great trick though. It looks fantastic on screen.
It does. And here's my big problem about that scene that they do rectify later with craps, but they don't rectify it in that scene because they act like blackjack. All you have to do is count cards and you'll know, but there is some luck, or I believe that Data calls it fortune, to blackjack. Blackjack's the game I play when I go to the casino. It's the one I know how to play.
Yeah, there is some random chance. There's some times where it's not winnable for you. Versus craps, where it's the roll of the die, and Data is a far advanced machine who can make very precise. I mean, he even notices that the dice are weighted and crushes them in his hands to fix the weighting.
But what is the science there? Because that really bothered me.
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
It's true, though. He just holds them in his hand real tight, and he's like, they're no longer weighted improperly.
He probably just pushed in one side enough that it counterbalanced the weight.
Oh, that's true.
But so I can understand that he would be able to make the calculations of, I got to throw it exactly like this and I'll get sevens every time. But yeah, so they discover because they once they're in the hotel, they can't be beamed out.
And they can't leave. They tried to go through the magic revolving door and it just puts them back in. Yeah.
Which is so funny because they just film it with them walking in and then walking back into the hotel. And it's just like, okay, so you guys just don't know how to use a revolving door.
I know, I had the same thought.
No, I mean, it's, it's understandable how they would shoot it like that. And obviously there was something they could have done it in the episode with Nagilum where, going through the door, you just see the bridge on the other side of the door as well, or something like that. But this is a cheaper way to do it.
And funnier, because there was a lot of humor in this episode. Worf with the telephone was super funny. I thought that was really funny. The way he goes up to it and he's looking at it and he's like, yes. I don't know. The whole thing was, there is a female voice asking us if we would like room service. Do they mean we want our room cleaned? I'm like, oh my God, guys. I just thought it was all so funny because, Picard would have known all those things because he's dad or whatever.
Yeah. And once they find the book, they're able to, tell the Enterprise, okay, it's all based on this book. And then so Picard just starts reading the novels so that he can see if he can find something, because they figure out that characters can leave when they are supposed to leave for the story. And so all they have to do is become characters that are supposed to leave. And Picard's like, oh, yeah, well, there was some vaguely written characters called foreign investors who buy the hotel at the end for $12.5 million. And then they leave. So if you guys can just, make that much money at the craps table and be the foreign investors, you should be able to walk out the door and then we can beam you up. And that's how they solve the issue. It's how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, and Riker seems to be the only one that picked up what Picard was laying down as well, because Worf and I guess it's Data, right, is down there. So Worf and Data are like, why are you giving away all this money? And he's like, because Picard told me that the foreign investors were very, I think they used...
Generous,
yeah, but flamboyantly. That's what it was, flamboyantly generous, yeah.
Yeah, they're just giving they're giving chips out to everyone who's like, buy a round for the house and, all that fun stuff.
Ruining Tex's day because, like, giving money to the girl means that he now can't rescue her with his money and then taking all of his money. Yeah.
Tex even bets against Data. He's like, I don't think so. You've had like 17 good rolls. You're due for a bad one. And Data's like, I wouldn't do that. Then he goes and gets a 7 and he's like, do you do that on purpose? And Data's like, I warned you not to vote against me. That's on you.
There was a little twinkle in Brett Spiner's eye, like, I told you.
Data had so much fun playing craps too. Just the there's just that one shot that has actually been like used as a reaction gif of Data winding up and then rolling the die and then going ooh, and then Riker like fist pumps. It is a classic shot.
I didn't know that was used as a react gif.
Oh yeah, like early days, like mid 2000s, before reaction gifs were standard and you could just pull them up by searching them in your Twitter comments.
Right.
Brent Spiner obviously had a lot of fun in this episode.
Single digits on each cube is not at all desirable was one of my favorite lines. I was like, that's so funny because that's the only thing I know about craps. You don't want to roll snake eyes.
So the way that they solve the thing by basically letting the story play out and then they're able to leave, that actually is this is like a non-holodeck episode in that way, because I thought
it was going to be a holodeck somehow, like some spaceships, like maybe even the one that blew up that they had all the debris from was going to have had like a rudimentary holodeck on it, and like somehow it created this whole thing, But
a lot of holodeck episodes, they're like, locked in, they can't open the door and the safety protocols are disengaged, and they figure, well, the program is designed to conclude once we finish the story, so our best bet to get out of here is probably just to play out the program and finish the story. So that gets used in a couple of holodeck episodes in the future. So this one kind of feels like a quasi holodeck episode.
Yeah, it did to me too. I wrote, is it a holodeck malfunction at one point in my notes? Yeah. I did laugh to myself when they kept referencing the manager as this guy we didn't know. The manager, I was like, is it going to be Kang the Conqueror? Like, who's the manager going to be? And it ended up just being some noir guy that killed the bellboy or whatever. Was the fact that the hotel was called like Hotel Royale or whatever, was that a James Bond reference as well? Or is Casino Royale only a newer? I couldn't remember if Casino Royale was featured in the older James Bond movies or not.
Well, I'm
not a huge James Bond person.
It wasn't an older movie, but it was the first James Bond novel written. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So it would be something they would know of. Oh, here, I wrote when they found his diary, I got the exact date. It was July 23rd, 2037. So that's when, so they said between 33 and like 77 or something like that, but I wrote it down. So 2037. I gotta say,
it's interesting how many like 21st century NASA ships or just Earth spaceships end up in deep space light years away from home.
And they always seem so confused about it every single time.
I have to imagine, and I've got Star Trek evidence to back me up here, I have to imagine there's probably a wormhole in orbit of the solar system, just a little ways out, like in the Oort cloud or something like that just, and it could be like stable at one end. So it's always in orbit of the solar system, but it'll spit people out willy-nilly.
Right.
The reason that I have backing for this is that in the first Star Trek movie, Star Trek the Motion Picture, which, as we all know, is a 2001 reference, there's a whole sequence where they go to warp, leaving Earth, and almost right away they get caught in a wormhole. And it was like this whole sequence where they're just like, oh, let's go to warp and let's do some cool special effects with it. And they get caught in a wormhole and they have to get out of it. And like, if they did that right after leaving Earth, then obviously it's nearby.
Well, so my brain is trying to make things happen, but you'll know better than me because you know more about Star Trek. But isn't the time travel that happens in the 2009 Star Trek also like right around Saturn? Like, isn't it very close, like in our galaxy, that there's something that causes the time travel and then they emerge like over by Saturn?
That was in the finale of the movie. And like they had opened up they opened up one of those black holes there. But no, the time travel happened elsewhere in the galaxy. But using the red matter that creates the black holes.
That's right, because Thor's the dad. I forgot about that. I was like rerunning the movie in my head, but he wasn't even Thor at that point, was he?
He wasn't. Yeah, that was like 2009. He wasn't Thor until like 2011. So it was right before he became a major movie star. He's only in that movie for like 5 minutes.
So I think we're ready now to go on to our next episode, which is Time Squared. It is the 13th episode of the second season, and it premiered on the 3rd of April, 1989. The teleplay was by Maurice Hurley, story was by Kurt Michael Bensmiller, and it was directed by Joseph L. Scanlon.
I'm not a huge fan of this episode, but I feel like we can get a lot of mileage out of the opening scene. Because
I have a page and a half of notes on the cold open.
Because Riker is making breakfast and he invites people over. Like, I think it's Geordi, Data, Worf, and Pulaski.
And does he only invite Pulaski because she brings the good alcohol? Because why was she there?
Well, did you notice that the door tried to close on her? Like, Data and Geordi walk right through, and then the door closes right as she's about to come through, and she even, like, flinches, and then she goes back through. But then the door tries to close again on Worf, and then Worf comes through. But it's funny, because, like, I thought everyone else was, like, bringing something in, and then Worf just walks in. Like,
yeah, he's just like, no, bring a present. Yeah,
I'm just here to eat.
I'm just here to eat this food and make fun of it. Okay, so one of my favorite quotes, and I like want to put it on like a fancy background and then attribute it to Bill Riker, is flair is what makes the difference between artistry and mere confidence. And I think that is like one of those like cheesy inspirational quotes that when you think about it doesn't really make a lot of sense, you know?
No, he didn't say confidence, he said competence.
Oh, did he say competence? Okay.
Competence, yes.
I wrote confidence. Okay.
No, it makes a little more sense with that. But yeah, so he says he's making omelets, but he's not making omelets.
No. So yeah, he made some terrible looking scrambled egg thing because there was like he didn't even like put any butter or oil or something to not make it stick.
Did you see half of the egg was just still like caked onto the pan when he was serving it.
I would not watch Cooking with Bill. I would not. Because, like, he puts these eggs down, and then instead of, like, consistently mixing them, when he does mix them, he doesn't bother to, like, scrape the bottom of the pan either, so he leaves this layer of cooked egg on the bottom, and then I was just like, this isn't an omelet. Also, he had the worst whisk I've ever seen.
It only had one wire.
It only had one wire. My notes say, plot, number 1, Riker makes omelets with the worst future whisk I've ever seen. Because what is that? And then it was so bad. And then Worf was being sexist? What was that? It's 300 years in the future. They keep making weird sexist comments as if the world is still, like, very, you know, binary, like, women this, men this, and it's weird.
Klingon culture is a little more patriarchal than human culture at this point, I think. And that's probably
from my understanding, human women are the ones that usually prepare the food, but it was just so that Riker could tell us his mom was dead. That was the setup for it. Mm-hmm. But like, dude, why would Worf even be saying that? I don't know.
Remember, Worf's a conservative. He's probably
he's a conservative. So my notes say, what in the is this abortion of an egg dish? I cannot believe this episode can overcome the shadow of Riker's cooking. And it doesn't.
I think that Riker is probably very overconfident in his cooking abilities, and he talks about, oh yeah, I always had to do the cooking. It's like, bitch, no you didn't. You had a replicator at home too.
Right, like everybody else.
And I don't know, it just feels like because of the replicator, the cooking is probably a bit of a lost art, and he just thinks that because he's able to put something on a stove and, you know, scramble it himself is like, ooh, voila, there, see, it's because if you order scrambled eggs from the replicator, it's going to be the same every time. And he's
right.
And that is actually a running theme in Star Trek, is that, you know,
and we talked about it with the Klingon dish, the prach.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We talked about it with that, but all of what you're saying is kind of wiped away by the fact that at the beginning, Pulaski said, well, your cooking is so good, it requires all of us to come and bring you gifts or something like that. Like that she was explaining why she brought the alcohol. So the writing undid your theory for you.
Well, here's... Riker does blame it on the quality of the eggs, because they were alien eggs that he's never had before. And it could be that, but it could be that he's shit at making scrambled eggs, which is one of the easiest things to make.
He also shit is making omelets because he says he's making an omelet. Yeah. Also, he just he plops some food in front of Data and says, these got a special ingredient or something. I'm like, how are this different? And does Data eat?
That's what I want to know. Did Dr. Soong give Data a fully functioning anus? Like, does he poop?
You've seen that movie with Haley Joel Osment as the robot, right? Where he starts.
I haven't.
Oh, okay. So there's this scene at the beginning.
I have. Yes. AI.
And
sorry.
Okay, so he's a robot, but they have a real baby too, who's at the hospital, and then he comes home from the hospital, and so the boy is eating, and Haley Joel Osment wants to be more human-like, so he starts eating the spinach or whatever, and so then his eyeballs start falling out, and his skin melts off for some reason.
Because he's damaging, he's not designed to eat, so it was damaging his servos or something like that.
It was a traumatizing scene for me. Yeah, I was like, that child is melting. That's what it reminded me of. I thought Data was going to start melting.
I assume Data can eat. I mean, we've seen him. I don't know if we've seen him drink yet, but I do remember in Star Trek Generations when he's first trying out his emotions chip, Guinan gives him a drink and he hates it, and he enjoys the sensation of hate, so he asks for another one. So obviously he can ingest things. I assume. I don't know, we never see him plug in. There's got to be some way for him to recharge his battery. Maybe he can extract energy from nutrients.
Yeah. Well, he's got to get the food out of him somehow, too, right?
Right. So he has a fully functioning digestive system. He poops. I kind of want to know what a Data poop looks like, because I can't imagine he's got... I can't imagine he's got a full gut biome in there. I don't imagine.
You mean 2 miles of intestines or whatever?
Well, or just a bacterial culture inside that does the digesting. I have to imagine it would be something more mechanical extracting it. So it whatever comes out, I can't imagine it would look like a human turd.
No, I don't think so either. Okay, so we kind of didn't talk about the plot because we were so concerned about Riker's omelets, but. Plus, omelets are an individual thing. You make one for one person.
I don't know why they could have just changed the line to scrambled egg.
Anyway, it was the best part of the episode. So they get in past the cold open, and there is a space shuttle floating around in space and twirling on its side and stuff. And they're like, okay, let's go out and see what that is. And they pull it in because there's no Federation starships around, right?
Right.
So why is this Federation ship out in the world? And they pull it in, and it says Enterprise 1701-D. And I don't know my Enterprises well enough. And I was like, what Enterprise is that?
That's our Enterprise.
It's my Enterprise. Okay. Okay, got it. And then, because I know there's an episode coming up with Scotty, right?
In 4 seasons or something like that, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I knew at some point Scotty showed up, so I was like, is it going to be Scotty, Mm-hmm. And then it turns out to be Picard. And then they take Picard up to sickbay, and he's opposite Bizarro Picard.
And we have to specify this is another Picard. Picard still is here. They have, and they even when they park the shuttle, they look and they see the identical shuttle next to it with the same, because it's Shuttlecraft 5.
Right. And then Riker hits his little doodad and he's like, Jean-Luc, he probably doesn't call him Jean-Luc. Picard, are you on the bridge? And he's like, where are you? He's like, I'm on the bridge. He's like, I think you should be in Shuttle Bay too.
Yeah.
And I was like, I feel like imagine it was you and me, and I found a car that had a copy of you maybe dead in it or passed out or something. I think I'd be like, let me explain what you're about to see. I feel like just come down here and experience it is a weird way to approach it, right? I don't know.
Right, but it's more dramatic. It's phone calls in movies are never realistic because nobody ever says goodbye before they hang up. It's one of those things. It's or like even in like police procedurals, they'll never explain on the phone what it is. Like, I think you should come down and take a look at this, and that, you know, because it's.
Whereas in real life, we usually go, okay, so here's the thing. Like, I'm imagining my day-to-day life. Like, oh, hey, to like one of the counselors I work with. Like, here's what happened. Here's the evidence. Now, if you need to go back it up, it's over there to go look at. You know, like, but it's weird the way in movies and TV
boring.
where like just come over here and experience it.
If we had realistic conversations in TV shows, they'd be more boring to watch.
Oh, they would be so boring.
So I'm okay with that kind of dramatic license, except I have one specific instance where I really hate the dramatic license, and it's when people are having a conversation in a car and the driver keeps their eye on the person they're talking to.
Oh, it drives me insane. Nobody, like, you look ahead, you don't have to make eye contact to talk to a person. And those of us who drive cars know this. We don't have to make eye contact while we're talking to the person. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. That's so stupid. So I have a big question in my notes here that's kind of a tangent, but I'm hoping that you'll know the answer because it's Star Trek related. So I'm concerned, or confused, I guess would be more the word, about Riker's pips.
Okay.
Because Riker has 3 pips.
Correct.
Three solid pips. Right. And Picard has 4 solid pips. Mm-hmm. So why doesn't Riker have 3 solid and 1 not solid? Wouldn't that make more sense? I don't know how Insignia works.
So 1 solid pip is ensign.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what they mean in like real military either. Like I never know what they mean.
Well, okay, right. So the Starfleet rank uses this same rank structure as the U.S. Navy. Okay. Officer ranks go ensign, lieutenant, junior grade, lieutenant, lieutenant commander, commander, captain, then admiral. I think it's just ensign is 1 pip, lieutenant is 2 pips, commander is 3 pips, captain is 4 pips. But then because you've got lieutenant, junior grade, and lieutenant commander, those are the in-between grades, and that's why they get the half pips.
That's where you get the little half pip thing? Okay. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And then I believe, if I understood what Pulaski was saying, she was basically saying she's the same rank as Riker, right? Because she's
a full commander.
Right, that's what I thought. Okay. That clears it up for me. I just was, because I was looking at the pips today, and because she was having that speech, you know, and I was looking at his, and he only has the 3, and I would have assumed, if you had asked me how many pips does Riker have before I looked at it, I would have guessed 3.5. Like 3 and then an unfilled one, just because I know that Picard is 4, you know, and he's number 2.
While we're talking about pips, O'Brien has 2 pips, and that's weird because he's not an officer. He is he's an enlisted man, and I think that might just not be established yet. So they never say his rank, and he's always like the chief transport officer, and so but that's like a position, not a rank. Just like how Geordi is chief engineer, but his rank isn't chief; his rank is lieutenant.
Right, that makes sense. Okay.
So I think they just hadn't established yet that O'Brien's rank was chief petty officer, which is it says officer in it, but that's an enlisted rank. It's one of the higher ones. So I think they just, that's why he's got 2 pips, like he's a lieutenant.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So they find them, and then, Picard does the whole, ooh, boy, look, it's me kind of thing, know, and then they come to realize that Picard 2 doesn't know Picard 1 is Picard. Like he
doesn't really know anything. Like it's like he's they try to like wake him up, and he's only like dimly aware of his surroundings. Like his brain isn't functioning properly.
I think Deanna said it was like he was looking at us across a great chasm, which was a good way to describe it. And so then even like the first time they try and wake him up, it almost kills him because she's like, no, the sedative had the opposite effect. And like the shuttlecraft is experiencing similar things because they're like, well, its power source apparently isn't compatible with ours. And they had to like change the phase variance of the energy as they're like putting it through. And then the Data's like, oh, you need to increase it by 2%. And they do that and it shuts it off. And Data's like, increase it by -2%. And then they do that. And then it works. It's like, well, that's counterintuitive, but it seems to work. And it's because they referred to it as a Morbius loop. right? That's what caused it to do the backwards thing, because it can like twist in on itself.
Worf talked about a Mobius loop as a potential.
Mobius, not Morbius. Morbius is that vampire guy.
Yeah, no, Mobius. A Mobius strip it's like that piece of paper that you flip over once and then tape it on itself so that it only has one side and it loops back forever. Right. So I think Worf was talking about that as like a hypothetical time travel situation in which you are stuck forever on that loop. And this shuttlecraft is only from like 6 hours in the future, which they find out once they've got the shuttle powered on and they check its internal clock. So they're like, okay, well, whatever happened, and like they pull logs and they discover that, you know, Picard took the shuttle out of the Enterprise, and then the Enterprise explodes in like some like space tornado. And they're like, well, we've got to figure out what it is that we do to avoid this situation. But as they get closer to it, eventually the other Picard wakes up and they're like, well, we need to talk. What were your other options? And Picard, but this other Picard seems like he's like locked in to this course of events.
Like he's repeating, like he's not even, like I wondered if it was supposed to be that he doesn't even really have like full control. Like he's just, because he's going to have to repeat the motions that he did before.
He's like an echo, and
an echo. That's a good way to put it.
Main Picard, just the entire episode is just, he's not having it with this other Picard. He's like, I don't care what I see. That may look like me, but there's nothing in him that resembles me. And
he got mad when Deanna was so like, that's you. It's you. I can tell it's you. He's like, no.
Yeah, and at the end, they actually do a lot of really, really good split screen stuff, and like him having a conversation with himself while they're walking through a hallway, and a lot of good compositing work and a lot of good timing work, because you know you have to think, okay, so for this time they had a stand-in go there, and Riker, not Riker, and Picard is, you know, saying the lines and then having to wait, and they probably had, the stand-in might have read the lines too, but they had to get the timing really right and had to make sure that the eyesight as they're like looking at each other lines up. Like the stand-in has to make the exact same motions that Patrick Stewart does. There was a lot of technical stuff that I thought was good, which makes one moment look really bad in comparison, and it's when they first find the other Picard in the shuttle bay, and they put him on a stretcher, and then they wheel him out of there, and they wait until he is fully wheeled out of the shuttle bay and the doors close, and then Deanna walks into frame, and then the other Picard walks into frame as well.
Yes, I did catch that actually. So they could do a continuous shot or whatever. Yeah. Right.
But because they wait until the doors close, you're like, okay, well, there's the obvious cut. And I'm just thinking, no, have Deanna walk into frame as they're carting him out, and then just do a split screen so that Patrick Stewart can walk in on the other side and talk to him. That would have been much more seamless, and like the pacing feels a little off because of that shot, and I was just like, that was an easy fix. You could have just... And
it was obvious. It felt so weird and obvious because of the way that Deanna walks into frame as soon as the door shut. Yeah.
Picard eventually figures out from the other Picard, because the other Picard's like, no, we can't go through it, it'll destroy us, we must do this thing. And so our Picard is just like, okay, well, that's what I'm gonna do then. And then he goes and kills the other guy. He just like grabs a phaser, and he doesn't stun him. He sets it on kill. He just goes, he just blows him away. Which like, is that suicide or murder? Which one is it?
No, my husband was sitting right there, and he walked in the room right at that moment because he hadn't been here for me watching the entire episode. He's like, and he goes, is that what they mean when they say murder suicide? I was like, I don't know. I thought he had put it on stun. I couldn't believe he killed him.
He killed him.
Yeah.
I would have stunned him just, you know, because, like, I don't know, maybe there's more information, like, especially when you try to fly through the thing, if that doesn't work, you might need to wake him up again. I thought that was going to end
up being our Picard in the end, because, like, time would catch up, and that would be our Picard. And so when our Picard was being so rude to that Picard, I was like, this is so weird.
But anyway... So Picard is like, okay, no, like, just punch it. We'll go through the anomaly instead of trying to get out of it, because the anomaly's like sucking them in, and they've been trying to warp out.
I think you mean the Doctor Who time vortex. It looked exactly like the thing that Doctor Who travels through with his TARDIS.
Anyway, once they go through, they clear the anomaly. Everything's fine. They're back on course to wherever they were, and the other Picard and the other shuttlecraft vanish as if they never existed.
Because no body, no crime.
No crime. And also because the timeline in which the Enterprise blew up and that Picard went and flung off, that no
Doesn't
longer
exist.
exists. So he has to
So are
vanish.
paradoxes not really a thing in Star Trek then? Because like they just spend the whole time like being in the same room as each other and stuff. Like other time travel shows would be like, oh my God, don't touch each other. You know?
Did you ever read the comic strip Calvin and Hobbes?
I mean, I've read it, here and there throughout my life.
Do you remember the game that they would play called Kelvin Ball?
It sounds familiar.
The rules of Kelvin Ball are you have to make up the rules as you go along, and you can never play it the same way twice. Star Trek operates on Kelvin Ball rules of time travel. Every single time travel story in Star Trek operates on completely different rules. Whether it's like, oh, well, can we remember what happened with the changes in the timeline, or does it branch off to a new timeline, or are we locked into, a grandfather paradox loop where, this always happened because it was always going to happen? It doesn't matter. It's all inconsistent, and it all depends on the writer and what they want to accomplish in that episode.
So there's no hard and fast rules to time travel.
There's no hard and fast rules to time travel in Star Trek. And the harder you try to make it all fit, the more you are going to exacerbate whatever migraine symptoms you have.
Okay, so my two favorite moments of the episode, like for like joke reasons, are Picard's bridge roll was really bad. Did you catch it?
I did not.
So he's standing up in the front for it instead of like sitting, and then everybody's in the background. But because it's like kind of like the camera's almost down on the floor, so you can see his whole body, kind of thing, Mm-hmm. And when he does the bridge roll twice, because they're going down into the time tunnel or whatever, all he does really is that he holds his shoulder down and he drops his one knee, and it almost looks like he's dancing. Like I think if you put it to music, it would look like he was like doing some terrible white guy dance, And then my other favorite one was when he says staff meeting in 5 minutes, because that is a Michael Scott from The Office line that he says all the time. He'll be like, conference room, 5 minutes. And when he said it, I had to take a picture of it and go find a GIF where Michael Scott was saying that and send it to people because I couldn't stop laughing because it was so funny to me. But I was like, ooh, Picard just called a Michael Scott conference room meeting.
Listen, this is a time travel episode, so this very well could have been an Office reference.
See, I didn't try to claim it was an Office reference this time. They brought up the Traveler.
I had that in my notes too, and it made no sense because they talked about how the Traveler was one of the beings that can travel through time, but he never traveled through time in his episode.
I didn't
He traveled
think so.
through space.
He
took them to like the edge of reality where thought and reality became intertwined, and like, they were
That's
so far
true,
away. They were like, any star date is meaningless because they were so far away. They're like, well, we couldn't even, with time dilation and all that, we don't know what time it could potentially be back on Earth. So I guess from that perspective, maybe, but it wasn't like he was jumping back and forward through time. He was just
to the edge of space.
He was going far distances. So that felt weird. Like they didn't really remember that episode when they were referencing it.
When they were like, oh, yeah, the Traveler. Because when they said it at first, I was like, oh, yeah, the Traveler traveling through time. And then now that you're saying that, I'm like, wait a minute, you're right. He didn't travel through time. It does take 29 minutes and 31 seconds for Picard to go, oh, wait. What caused the time loop?
Yeah.
I wrote down the time because I was like, oh, finally, someone has asked the, wait, what caused this problem rather than what is this problem, But I don't know. I just didn't like this one, but not for a lot of the reasons that I didn't like other ones. Like, it's not because it's like bad. It's just not an interesting story, And
again, this is Calvin Ball rules, but we never see a character time travel and then suddenly their like mind is out of sync with time until they reach their original time again. That never happens again. That's only in this episode, and it's weird.
And the talking backwards thing, or the going backwards thing, I mean.
Right, because if Picard is like out of phase with his time, it shouldn't fix itself once he goes back to the original time.
Because he's still 6 hours ahead.
Because he's still 6 hours ahead. He should always be 6 hours out of phase. The only fix to that would be jumping forward in time 6 hours.
Right. And they don't have the technology to do that.
Well, they do when they don't. Time travel technology in Star Trek is varied, and whether it's possible or whether it's an easy trip to the past or whether it's something that you have to have like a Spock to calculate on the fly as you're doing a warp slingshot around a star, it depends.
Because Calvin Ball, exactly.
Because Calvin Ball.
Well, I think that's it. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Ari.
And I'm GayFesh.
And until next time,
live long and prosper.
Thanks for watching.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified when new episodes come out.
We're on Twitter at RestBothWorlds.
Join our Patreon at patreon.com/restofbothworlds for bonus content and hear your name at the end of each episode.